Hello YouTube and welcome back to Old Maryland 63C10. In this episode we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to talk a little bit about the products and some of the process I've been using to start the bodywork on the truck. And at the end of the video we will get to work on the inside of the cab to start doing some more bodywork. So stay tuned. The reason why I wanted to talk through some of the products I'm using is after putting out my last video, I felt like it was kind of disjointed. I would talk about one step and then I'd come back and the step was basically done. So I didn't really talk through what I was putting on or how I went about doing it. I didn't put as much of that on film for one main reason is because, as I've said multiple times in different videos, this is the first time I've really done this kind of work. So I didn't really have a whole lot of confidence, frankly, in putting out information on YouTube on how I was doing it until I at least tried to do it a couple times. So I thought I wanted to go back and, if people have questions about what I'm using, this video will answer that. I would highly encourage everyone to do a lot of research on the products that they may want to use on their car or their truck. I am by no means an expert, nor am I really recommending these products. I will tell you why I'm using them. But again, this is my first time, so it's not like I'm an expert to say, oh, this is absolutely the only type of Bondo you want to use or the only type of primer you want to use. Do your own research. When I started to look into things, I definitely went on information overload. I had to take a step back and I put a lot of questions out in different forums. I put questions out on to other YouTubers, if for nothing else, just to learn the vocabulary of these different products. So definitely do your own research, learn as much as you can before making decisions and figure out what's going to work best for you and your project. So now let's take a look at the products I've been using. Okay, first up is the JP390. So through Shopline. So I ended up going with that because a couple reasons. I do have a PPG distributor that's near me, so that was kind of my go-to because I could go talk to somebody. But then I found out the original epoxy paint from PPG that I wanted, they had a problem getting, and I don't know if it was some kind of compliance issue in Maryland where I am, or whatever it might have been. But when I went in and asked them for a particular paint, they couldn't get it. So they had recommend that Shopline is a very good product for an epoxy paint. Lays down smooth, seals up metal well, does all those things that you want from an epoxy paint. And they had some there, and I could get it in quarts. It was also less expensive than the primer that I was actually looking for. So a little bit of a cost savings. It was available in quarts. I should say, as far as the shop line goes, I have no complaints. I have nothing to compare it to. So I'm not sure if I can really say it's great, but it has gone on fine as far as the spray. Again, I don't have anything to compare it to, but I think it works just fine. Next up is the kitty hair body filler from Evercoat. And I guess I should say I'm kind of starting from bare metal and coming up. So bare metal from a lot of the parts of the truck, or I at least sanded things down to bare metal, did the epoxy. For any of the welded areas, I'm using the kitty hair. So a couple reasons that I'm going with the kitty hair, especially the Evercoat kitty hair. Again, it seemed like it had some of the better reviews as far as basically being a durable, tough body filler. With this, as well as everything else, being kind of my first attempt at doing a fair amount of welding, especially in sheet metal, I am very positive I'm going to have pinholes in my welds. No matter how much I shine lights behind it, no matter how much I tried to grind and find holes, I'm sure I'm going to have them. So in places where I think I need to make sure I seal everything up, I've been using the kitty hair. Again, the advantage of this is it's in a quart. I know I will probably never go through this entire quart, but that was a big advantage to using the kitty hair. Little pricey, but I felt like this was the best product as far as reviews and being durable. The one problem I've had is with a lot of pinholes in the putty when I sign it. I'm sorry, when I sand it. I have a feeling that is as much, or I should say, that's probably my application of it that needs to improve. And I've kind of done some research and already have some ideas on how I'm going to change how I do it to hopefully improve, or to get rid of a lot of the pinholes. So on all my weld seams, if I didn't do seam sealer, I used the kitty hair from Evercoat. After the kitty hair was sanded, I went over everything with a layer of epoxy to seal everything up because I had some breakthroughs. And then after that was scuffed, we went to body filler. So body filler was another area, or one of the areas that I got information overload on, and I needed to kind of step back and do a little bit more research before I ended up buying anything. There are tons of companies out there making body filler. Evercoat, U-Pole, of course, everybody knows Bondo. Eastwood has a line of fillers, and I wanted to do some research to try to figure out what was going to work best for me. I mean, even Evercoat alone, they have Rage, they have Rage Gold, I think, they have Rage Ultra, they have Rage Extreme, they have Rage Ultra Extra. They have a glazing putty. They have a J glaze or something like that, or something like that. They have a lightweight filler. So even under one company, there's just all these different varieties of filler. So again, did a bunch of research, asked some questions on the forums, emailed some YouTubers just to try to get a little bit more information before I decided. I ended up going with the Rage Ultra. And the reason why I went with the Ultra is, according to most of the reviews and the way people had talked about it, it's easily to spread, it's easy to sand, and it's good at avoiding pinholes. They make a Rage Ultra Extra. Oh, and they also make an Optex, which changes color when you sand it. And I didn't need any of that. But anyway, the difference between the Ultra and the Ultra Extra is the amount of time until the putty sets up. So extra gives you more time, and it's mainly designed, from what I read, for doing large panels. So if you're trying to really have a straight panel and you're doing a layer of putty on everything to then block down, the extra is better. The ultra is designed for smaller patches because it dries faster. So I thought, well, I'm doing small patches, I'm not doing big panels, I'll go with the ultra. It dries really fast. Now, some of it I think was my mixing techniques. Some people combine the ultra and the extra to try to shorten the time versus extra and extend the time versus ultra. I just didn't want to mess with that, get into that chemistry, and try to get something right. So I went with the ultra for my smaller patches. I did get a bunch of pinholes. I think that was definitely more on my application and, more importantly, my mixing. I'm, probably overly cautious with my mixing because I'm like, is that the right color? Is that blended well enough? And I keep mixing, mixing, mixing. Meanwhile, I'm burning time. So I think the next time I do it, I'll try to do a few things a little bit differently, which I will show you and talk about in the video when we start doing more body filler. So went with went with Rage Ultra. And again, I have nothing to compare it to, but it went fine except the pinholes, which again, I put more blame on myself. Okay, so the next one is the high build primer. Now, this is really where I went down a rabbit hole with primers: epoxy, urethane, polyester, direct to metal high build, urethane high build, polyester high build. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of products that are out there, and not to mention the manufacturers. PPG, U-Pole, Nason. They might have been bought out by another company, but Nason was out there. Summit, the TCB, or I'm sorry, TCB Global has Restoration Shop, Custom Colors. There are so many different primers out there. Again, this is where things really got off the rails for me as far as trying to research. Now, part of it was, or I should say, part of the difficulty was what I want to do on top of the high build, and we'll get to that when we get to our colors. But I was basically looking for the unicorn. I needed something that was going to be that could go direct to metal, because I knew with my lack of bodywork skills, I was going to have breakthroughs to bare metal when I was doing the body filler part. No matter how many layers of epoxy, the epoxy is just not that thick. I knew I was going to have breakthroughs. So I needed something that was going to be direct to metal. That was one. I wanted to avoid throwing another layer of epoxy on, only to then cover it with a high build and have to block that down. So I was looking for something that was going to be epoxy and high build. So then I needed something that was going to go on old paint, because even though I'm only doing like the cab corners, let's say the cab corner area that I'm fixing is going to bump up against the existing red paint because I'm not painting the entire cab. So I needed something that was going to be able to basically adhere to, just a little bit of an overspray into the existing paint. Then I needed something that was going to work with both enamel and lacquer paint, and I'll get to the reasons about that in a second. So I was looking for something that was going to do everything. When I called the company that I got the colors from, they were like, "Oh, this isn't going to work with that. This isn't going to work with that. You need this because of that." And it kind of sent me reeling backwards to then try to find out what kind of primers to use. So again, same thing. Reached out to some YouTubers, reached out to the forums, put questions out there all over the place. What are people using? What are they using on top of it? Because I know people have done work on their trucks the same way I'm trying to, in that they're not painting the whole cab, but we are going to paint, and it's going to blend, not color wise, it's going to blend into the existing paint of the trucks. And after a lot of discussions, a lot of conversations back and forth, I went with the VP 2050 for a couple reasons. One, it seems to have a fantastic reputation as being a very high quality primer. It's direct to metal. It's also high build so that it can be blocked, and it seems sturdy enough, for lack of a better, for lack of a better term, it will work with the enamels and the lacquers I want to spray on the truck. So I went back to my PPG distributor locally here, said, "This is what I want to do." Talked to one of their reps, and he said, as long as you scuff it, as long as you scuff it to what the top coat wants, it'll work just fine. So that's why I went with VP 2050. The downside is, it didn't come in a quart. I had to buy a whole gallon, and it is very pricey. So I, bit the bullet, bought the expensive primer because of what I want to put on it, what I'm trying to use, what I'm trying to cover up with it. And, we'll see how this goes. I will say I've sprayed it on the rocker panels. I sanded it, which we'll show you here in a minute. And it, again, I have nothing to compare it to, but it seems to have worked fine. Of course, I haven't top coated it yet, but it covered all my bare spots, and was pretty easy to sand. So that's why I went to the VP 2050. We'll see how it works out in the long run. Last but not least are the colors. So for the interior, I wanted to paint it the original GM fawn color, but a couple people who restore these trucks said, reach out to TCP Global, tell them what you're doing. They have the original paint codes. So I did. So that's what I called TCP Global. Their restoration shop has the original match for the interior fawn. So in talking to the different people, again, there were several people on the Chevy truck forum, the 1947 to whatever it is truck forum, who were extremely helpful. They gave me a lot of great advice, talked me through a lot of the different paints, what they do, how they act with other primers. So, to those guys, if they were watching this video, thank you very much, because you really helped me make these decisions. For the interior, I went with a lacquer paint. The reason why I went with lacquer is, again, the recommendation was that lacquer will spray out. It's pretty forgiving. It dries fast, and it also has very little sheen to it. And for the interior of the truck, you almost want a flat color because of glare off the dash. With a metal dash, you want to keep as much glare down from the windshield, so you want almost like a flat paint. And lacquer, in order to shine, I think what people were telling me is it needs to be buffed. So if you spray it and leave it, it'll have a dull finish to it, which is what you want for the interior. So again, that's why I'm using the lacquer. It did come in quartz, which was nice because, again, I don't have many of these trucks to do. I only have one. So that's why I went with TCP Global, because they had the original mixing codes for this paint, and they could do it in a lacquer for me. So that's going to be on the interior. So the interior was a little bit easier to deal with than the exterior because I took the interior completely down to bare metal epoxy. I will high build it, made some of my metal patches in the area above the windshield, and then we'll spray it. There's no color blending. There's no matching old paint. So that one is a little bit easier. When moving to the exterior, that's where things got a little bit more interesting, mainly because I'm going to be spraying up to and essentially overspraying a little bit into the original paint of the truck. Again, I am not trying to color match. I know it's not going to color match. There are 3 different shades of red on this truck depending on where you're looking. So I'm not trying to match the color, but what I was trying to do was find paints that were going to stick and stay on the existing paint, even though it's just the little overspray areas. So the guys on the forum recommended that I go with enamel. So I have 2 cans of enamel. The red is the original cardinal red of the truck. Again, TCP had the mixing ratios. So again, even though I'm not entirely painting the whole cab, I do want to have at least something that's the same as what it was from the original or from the factory, because eventually I do want to paint this truck. So I figured I'd at least start with the right color. And then I also got cameo white, which will be for the steering column, the bezel around the gauges, the interior door panels, because I do want to eventually put the custom appearance type of interior door panels that have the area where the cranks are and the door handle painted white. The grill, the bumpers, all those things are cameo white. So I went with enamel for that. Now, one of the reasons why they said to go with enamel is because enamel is sort of a semi-gloss, but I can buff that down to actually knock some of the gloss out of it to get closer to my existing paint where it's very faded. So, and they thought enamel would be a better paint for the outside. I think because it's a little bit harder, takes a lot longer to dry, but could be a little bit more durable for the outside. Now, I think I got this right. When it comes to these 2 paints, lacquer and enamel can go over lacquer, but lacquer cannot go over enamel. I think I had that right. Lacquer has solvents in it, I think is what it is, and it uses lacquer thinner. And if you put lacquer over top of enamel, the thinners or whatever is mixed in it will lift and break down the enamel paint and cause problems. If you put lacquer down first and let it cure completely, and the thinner and the catalyst or whatever else is in the paint is able to evacuate out, or I should say evaporate out, and then you can put enamel over that. So there are a couple spots on my firewall is also the fawn color. So when I paint the firewall in the original, the red was blended up to it under the tire. So that's an area where the red is essentially going to get a little bit of an overspray. There was no paint line, so the factory just oversprayed it. So that's where a little bit of this enamel will overspray onto the lacquer. And in the inside, where the steering column is and the instrument panel, in that narrow area is cameo white. So while I won't paint that whole area with the interior fawn, some of it will be there and the white will overspray a little bit onto it. So I just have to be careful again about what I put down first, how long I let one to cure before the other one goes down. And again, this was all part of that learning process of paints. So this is the top coat. Hopefully someday, relatively soon, we'll get doing some color, which would be really nice to finally see some color go back on the truck. So that's all the products that we're using in the bodywork on the truck. So you may be wondering, why did I spend the amount of money on some of the higher end products when my skill set is not to that level? If you're wondering that, I asked myself the same question, believe me, when I was doing the research on the product. I really came up with 2 different scenarios as far as what products to go with. Scenario A would be, basically buying some of the less expensive stuff, because what's it really going to matter if I don't know how to apply them correctly, or what I'm really trying to do with the body work. Or scenario B, buy the better stuff. Hopefully it goes on better. In the case of the Bondo, spreads better, to essentially elevate my skills a little bit because I'm using a better product. Obviously, I went with scenario B. So I'm hoping that, using the better Evercode, the better VP 2050, I'll have a better result in the end that, again, can essentially mask some of my inexperience working with these products. So as we transition into looking at the truck and actually doing some work, again, I'll say the same thing. Make sure you do your research, your own research, to figure out what's going to work best for you and for your project. Um, I guess I pretty much have to say none of these products obviously endorsed this small little YouTube channel. Um, so I picked those again just by doing my own research. So you should do yours. So let's take a look at the truck and get started working on the interior of the cab. So in the last video, we wrapped up laying down the VP 2050 high build, and I hadn't sanded it yet because, again, I just want to take some time, let it cure up, and get that video out. So I went back and sanded it. It's in 400 right now. I can still see some sanding scratches in it. I'm not sure if the camera's picking it up. Um, so I may have to hit it again with some more 400 to try to take out some more of those scratches. I did guide coat everything, but I was more guide coating for sanding scratches than I was for imperfection or low spots, because I know the bottom of the rocker, especially up here, it's the original metal. And I can tell you right now, and you might be able to see it, I got a low spot right here, and I got that dent right here. And I just wasn't worried about filling those in. This isn't going to be a show truck, it's going to be a driver. The outside turned out really well. Really happy with that, except for the spot where I drug my sleeve through it because I'm an idiot and wasn't paying attention. The spot up here where I caught it on the way through sanded out, but this spot didn't sand out. So I'm either going to have to put some glazing putty in it, or I might end up shooting this again when I do this whole side. I'm not sure yet, because I did have at least one spot where I broke through up here, and I think it might be on the other side, but I have a breakthrough here. I have another breakthrough spot here, a couple breakthrough spots here that I'll have to do something with before I top coat. This bottom turned out pretty nice. Again, no complaints here. This side really turned out nice. I was really happy with how this sanded down. I have the pinholes that I knew about that I'm not sure if the camera's going to pick those up. But yeah, you can see some of these little tiny pinholes in here that I'm going to have to go back and fix. And I knew they were there. I guess I was hoping against hope that they were going to sand out, but they didn't. So we're gonna have to work something out with that. The rockers are essentially done, but I am gonna make sure the outer part, the curve, is a little bit better. Like I said, got to fix the pinholes, got to fix where my sleeve went through it, for the love of God, and maybe work a little bit more on the scratches. So let's look at what we're going to do now on the inside of the truck to move forward with more body work. Okay, so what I've decided to do is work on the roof of the cab while it's in this position. I think I'm going to go ahead and work on the roof of the cab. We'll get in here. I'll be able to sit on essentially the back of the cab. I'm going to move the blanket out of the way so I can put my legs down there and work in here. And then hopefully paint the top. I'll tape it off at the two pillars and in the back. And I might go as far as painting the entire top of the cab while it's in this position. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is work on the body work for this patch that I had to put in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is strip back all of the paint. There is a little bit of paint still on certain spots where I took this patch out of my parts truck. So to do that, we're going to get a strip disc on my angle grinder and just work on this metal a little bit to clean everything up and get it as clean as possible, and then start with the kitty hair. Okay, so we're going to get started with the kitty hair. I'm going to do a couple things different than I did when I tried before. The first thing I did was I actually weighed the body fill or the kitty hair and then the hardener. And I don't know if you can see on the board there, I didn't mix it yet because it took me a second to get inside the cab for one. And the other tip that I saw was mix it up right in front of where you're going to work so that it doesn't literally, you start losing time getting closer to your panel. So by weighing it, keeping it separate till I'm ready to put it on, it hadn't started to harden yet. And I also got a spreader that's closer to this curve right here. So I'm going to use this flat one to mix it up, and then I'm going to use this curved one, which kind of fits in that groove right there to hopefully be able to smear it out a little bit better than using a flat one. So I'm going to get my mask on and then start mixing this up. Got the kitty hair all sanded. Turned out much better than doing the bottom. Some of the spots over here turned out really well with very, very few pinholes, if any. Some of the ones I think I have along here are more because it wasn't that even of a spread. So I did like 3 different things. So I'm not sure what worked the best, but it turned out better. So the next thing we're going to do, tape everything off, and we're going to put a coat of epoxy over the areas that we just did. Before I do that, I'll probably scuff it to 120 to try to knock out some of the deeper scratches, and then we'll start painting. Got everything scuffed down to 120, taped up across the top to try to keep the paint, the overspray off the red. I scuffed this whole area in here with 120 already, so I'm not so worried about overspray on that because it's going to get scuffed down again once I start doing body work. So we're going to put a couple coats on this and hopefully get this sealed up, and 2 other small spots down on the cab corners where I want to do seam sealer. So we'll come back right after we spray. Okay, 2 or 3 coats of epoxy on, and we are ready for body filler. This turned out a lot better than the bottom. There are some pinholes. You can kind of see them right there in the kitty hair, but nothing compared to what I had at the bottom. So whether it was mixing on the board and then putting it right up there, whether it was weighing the hardener, I'm not really sure. Let me go around the other side and show you that. On this side, some spots you can't even hardly tell. There was a place I filled in right around here. Um, and I don't really have hardly any pinholes that I could even see. So we'll still smear some body filler on that. And right around where I added this patch in the center, again, it's not completely even, but a little bit of skim of body filler and we'll be good to go. I got some overspray down here, but again, that's okay because I scuffed most of this hood, or I'm sorry, most of the roof before I shot this, and it's going to get high build and get scuffed again anyway. So I was really hoping I was going to be able to paint outside, but it's just too windy today where I could set my camera far enough away that it wouldn't get covered with overspray to show you my paint. So I know this video got really long. That's pretty much where we're going to wrap up today. I talked a lot in the beginning, so there wasn't as much work on the truck. So apologize for that because normally it's all about working on the truck. So in the next video, we're going to come back. We're going to scuff this. We're going to do the body filler, and we're going to try a little bit different process with that. We're going to weigh it. We're going to mix it once we get inside the cab. Spray high build, and with any luck, we're going to be spraying some paint spraying color on this roof. And that'll all hopefully be on the next episode of Old Maryland 63 C10. And thanks for watching.